conference right now that is talking about the sexting scandal in the Canon City area. The officer is now going to open the door for me.
We felt that it was absolutely necessary. It is not necessarily the case that all of the children involved in the circumstance will have to register as a sex offender. We will only seek that remedy through the courts if we believe that there is no other choice and that it's absolutely necessary and in the best interest of the victims involved and the children involved in our community. That's all I have. I think maybe we're going to answer any questions that you have.
A couple of things real quick, just to wrap up. I'd like to introduce Jen O'Connor. She's our crime prevention technician. She has prepared a community bulletin, which will be going out both electronically and hard copies, hopefully in a mass distribution, reminding parents to have a conversation with their children and reminding them how this photo vault app works and asking them to literally step up to the plate and check their child's cell phone. So we will be distributing that here very shortly. We have copies for anyone here who's interested in that. And Jen O'Connor can be reached here at the police department for any additional information if anybody, any member of the community wants more information on how these things work. She's been researching this, so be a point of contact with them. So one other quick thing, there is a parallel investigation going on right now. Does not have anything to do with this particular case, this investigation. We were notified this morning that the Greenbrier, Tennessee Police Department has almost virtually the same type of event happening there. A large-scale sexting investigation at their high school. So as was mentioned earlier, this is happening around the country. We are actually being contacted by other law enforcement agencies that are experiencing the same thing. Again, it's Greenbrier, Tennessee. So with that, we'll take any questions you might have. Yes.
Are you aware of it? Are there any other acts besides this photo vault that are hiding these things?
I'll let Jen address that. She may have some of that information now. I don't know if she has all of it. She's looking into it.
Actually, Carrie, in the Community Crime Prevention Bulletin about secret phone photo vaults, I've included some photos of what Android and iPhone apps may look like and resources to go ahead and check online. You can Facebook secret phone photo vault, say that 5 times fast. You can Facebook that and you'll come up with dozens of Facebooks on how to install it on your phone and how they work. You can also just go on your phone and go in the App Store and type in secret, and you'll find all the different types that are available on each individual phone from the servers.
Any other questions?
Just float over to Florence.
We don't have any information to indicate that at this time. If we do, then we will certainly pursue that. Yes.
Obviously, as you said, several students are involved in this. It's a big investigation. My question is, you said it would be handled on a case-by-case basis, but how is the DA going to handle all of these students? Are you calling in for extra help, or does that just mean its investigation will be longer?
That's a good question. We have had a couple of discussions about that. If you're talking about from the investigative perspective, it's too early to determine if we're going to need more help. But we are preparing, if we do need more help, to obtain those resources. So we'll have to assess that. We're hoping to have some idea by next week if we're going to need additional resources. Our target to have some degree of what we're calling substantial completion of this is about 30 days. But it very well may require additional help, and we are prepared to ask for that if we need it.
How many children has the police department interviewed? I know you don't have an exact number, but are we talking a few, dozens? How many?
We haven't interviewed anybody yet. We're in the process of obtaining search warrants. We're in the process of coordinating forensic examinations of cell phones. That will precede any interviews. But the interviews will be coming very shortly.
And this may be a question for the superintendent. Has anyone been suspended as a result of this scandal?
My answer to that, and I won't go deeper into it, is students with an S have already been suspended.
questions. So you mentioned numerous times that this is obviously a nationwide problem. So what do you want to tell the parents everywhere watching this, not just in Colorado?
Please have a conversation about this with your children. Please check their cell phone. Please take a look at this crime prevention bulletin that we have prepared. Be aware of this and have that conversation with your children. Let them know that when things go out over social media, that may be living out there for a long time. If it hits the internet, other social applications, that it can be around for a long time.
At this point, how many phones have you guys obtained?
3 phones.
And you guys said that you are investigating the potential involvement of adults?
That would be correct. In Colorado, if you reach the age of 18, at the age of 18 and over, you are considered by state law an adult.
Can you give a rough number of how many students have been suspended?
Plural. Just saying plural. We're a small community, and I don't want fingers starting to be pointing.
Can you describe the difference between if a student was either taking the photos or if they were caught receiving them, just the different punishments or what they would be facing, how that varies?
I'll refer that to Mr. Ledoux.
The law doesn't necessarily make those distinctions. In other words, it doesn't matter whether it was consensual. So if you are taking and sharing these types of photographs, you're guilty of the same crimes as the individuals that are receiving them and keeping possession of them. So there's no distinction under the law. Now, that's the law, and the district attorney's office will make distinctions as we see fit, depending on the levels of culpability and exactly what people have been involved with, whether or not things were consensual or the result of any coercion, those types of factors. We will make individual decisions about what's necessary in each individual case based on what the investigation uncovers.
Are the possible aggravating factors the sort of line between them having to register as sex offenders, or is that not necessarily?
The list of aggravating factors that I provided earlier are just the aggravating factors that the chief of police and I sat down and came up with that we would focus on in the investigation going forward. There's no formula in terms of saying, okay, well, if we get 2 aggravating factors or 3 aggravating factors, then you have to register as a sex offender. There is no formula to any of this, whether it be this type of crime or offense or incident or any other crime that's committed. It's the same, whether it's a homicide or a DUI. You look at the individual case on a case-by-case basis, look at aggravating circumstances, mitigating circumstances, and then decide what a just outcome is. So no, there's no formula or math to it.
But in this case, there's no charge that would come automatically with a registering.
Well, there are no criminal charges that are automatic under any circumstances. So there are no mandatory charges that have to be filed in these types of cases. This is not a circumstance where there has to be a mandatory arrest. There are very limited circumstances in which there are even mandatory arrests. There are some crimes that carry mandatory penalties. These crimes do not. The ones that we're talking about in terms of possessing or sharing these, and particularly within a juvenile context, there are very few mandatory penalties or charges. So really, the district attorney's office, and we'll consult with the community and the law enforcement agency, we have a limited range of discretion to determine how best to proceed with these cases, and that can include no formal prosecution on individual cases or on an incident-wide circumstance. But we can't make those decisions until we see what the investigation uncovers. It's possible that there will be no criminal charges filed as a result of this incident at all. Again, if the investigation determines that none of these aggravating circumstances exist, and we look at the results of the investigation and we decide that it's in the best interest of all of the children involved in the school district and the community not to file any criminal charges, then that is certainly the approach we'll take. If we decide, looking at those individual cases, that it is in the community's best interest to file charges in individual cases, then we'll take that approach.
Do you have a ballpark number of how many kids were involved?
No, it's so early in the investigation that it would be pure speculation to say, other than to dovetail on the superintendent's comments. More than one.
Is it too early in the investigation to determine if the pictures have left the Canon City area and gone elsewhere?
Yes.
Yes, it's too early?
Too early.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that you've obtained a phone. There's photos on it. You guys have not been able to look at them yet. But how did you obtain that phone? Was that a student dropping it off, or was that the result of someone who was expelled?
We're not releasing that right now. The only information we're releasing is that a phone came into our possession. There were numerous images on it, and with consultation with the school district and the DA's office, appeared to be criminal activity under the state statutes, and we initiated an investigation.
It might be worth mentioning, and the chief alluded to it a little bit, that it's going to take us some time to get the investigation underway, and at the moment we're making sure that we're in compliance with the Fourth Amendment, obtaining search warrants, and then making sure that we're doing a forensic analysis of the phone. That is different than just picking up the phone and swiping through it and looking through that phone. Obviously, that's possible, but we decided that it was important in this case to make sure that we had a forensic analysis of the phone. There are pros and cons that come along with that. One of the cons is that it takes a little bit longer. The pro is that we have a very thorough analysis of the phone, and one that's secure from an evidentiary standpoint.
What grade levels are involved?
I think in the investigation, it's very early, and so the short answer is we don't know the full scope of that, but in terms of getting information out to the community to encourage parents to sit down with their children and have this conversation, we can tell parents of middle school children that they also need to engage in these conversations.
You've said you're investigating if adults are involved. Do you have suspicion to believe that they are, or are you just...
No, nothing specific at this point.
But no confirmation right now that adults are involved?
Correct. We have no specific indication that any of them are, but obviously that's something that the investigation will be looking into, and that is an important aspect of the decision-making process and with respect to any potential prosecutions. And to make it clear, probably goes without saying, but the penalties for adults that are involved are much different than penalties under the law for juveniles that are involved, and appropriately so.
You said some people can face up to a class 3 felony. So just people that don't know, can you go into detail what that could include?
Well, there are a wide range of penalties, particularly for juveniles. Juvenile penalties are much different than adult criminal penalties. For adults that are engaging in this behavior, the potential penalties for a felony involve sentence to the Department of Corrections, and/or there are no mandatory penalties for these particular types of crimes that we're talking about here. And so it can be anywhere from probation to incarceration in the Department of Corrections for the adults. For juveniles, the penalties are much different. There is the possibility of detention in a Department of Corrections youth detention facility for as many as 2 years for a felony. And those possible penalties range all the way down to no detention and a probationary type sentence. So again, and I think this is the good news is that we have a limited range of discretion to determine how to prosecute the case and then what penalties to ask the court to impose.
The students that are suspended, are they suspended indefinitely, or is there a set amount of time, or?
These are juveniles, and they have their rights to privacy, and by policy, we follow our policies. I really don't feel like it's fair to share any more than that.
Some parents have said that they brought this to the administration's attention years ago. What do you have to say about that?
I have no indication that an issue of this scope has ever come to the Canon City School District. As when I began my presentation, has it happened in the past, as in for sure one child or a couple of children having this issue? Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not sure if in the last 5 years we could count them on both of my, both my hands would have enough fingers to count them. And I guarantee you, most school districts in Colorado have dealt with this as well. There was never an attachment. What's unusual about this is it's large scale. But we have never been able to make an attachment to this is part of a larger thing. As I said earlier, when we get that information, and we realize what it is, it's our job to turn it over to the police. And in terms of my lack of an answer for what was the punishment for students who we have addressed this with, juveniles have rights, and so unfortunately to the public, when they say I reported this and nothing was done, it sometimes feels like that, even though something was done. And all indications I have is that our procedures are clear. If we know anything about it, we make sure the right people in our schools know about it, and they take the action of reporting to the police. And at that point, it's out of our hands, unless it was something that clearly happened on campus. And I really kind of couldn't answer a question about whether that has happened on campus in the past.
But can you say that suspension is appropriate in this matter? Because the police department, it looks like they just started an investigation, so there's no findings yet. The DA doesn't know if any charges are going to be brought because the police department hasn't done their investigation yet. And here we have students who are suspended and out of the classroom and away from a learning environment.
Yeah, and the answer to that is our standard for a school district is different from that of a district attorney for criminal charges. And in fact, in a loose way, to determine how we know these pictures exist, our standard for a search on a school campus is different than that of the police. So you can infer the answer to that question that was asked before: how did we come into possession? Well, the answer is, once we knew what we were dealing with, we stopped. We turned it over to the police, but we kind of know the scope of what we're dealing with.
This is so unusually large scale, but has this prompted the school district to get together and talk about how to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I left that out of my presentation. It's not a thing to do at this very moment, and I so much appreciate the Canon City Police Department for putting this resource out immediately to parents, to the community. But this is my belief, and the research I've done in the time I've had in the last few days, which hasn't been much time, is that it's not the kind of thing where you just call an assembly and say, don't do this. It's the kind of thing that, as early as possible, and we'll try to figure out where that is. Maybe it's third grade anymore. Maybe it's even earlier. I don't know. We start talking to kids about the legal and ethical use of their devices. We don't provide these devices to the children; their families do. And of course, a big part of this has to be in partnership with all these organizations, to where we educate parents about what they can do to help. But I believe it will become, how might you say, an embedded part of most everything we do going forward, because we do want to encourage kids to use these devices they've brought in an educationally sound purpose. But we also need to help them understand what the legal ramifications are for some things they do. And my hope is families will help them understand what the moral implications are of some of the things they're choosing to do.
Will there be any further meetings involving parents and students in the future?
It's really hard to say that. My hope is, though, that we start doing some community engagement at the school level that might be parent education, during parent conferences or open houses or things like that. Would be a great time to get information out to parents about what they can do to support their child's ethical use of the device they bought them.
As you've mentioned, this is a very lengthy investigation, but looking at a time frame, I know it's hard to pinpoint, but could this take several months till charges are filed, or?
As I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to have substantial steps completed in 30 days. That does not mean we're hoping to have everything completed in 30 days, but we're hoping to have a very clear picture of exactly what we're dealing with in approximately 30 days.
The nice thing about having a cooperative relationship with the chief of police and being involved in the investigation from its inception is that will certainly expedite our review of the matters once the investigation is concluded. We won't have to then review the entirety of the investigation starting at that point. So again, we don't have any solid timeframes, but I want to again commend the superintendent and the chief of police for involving the district attorney's office. We're doing everything we can to move this forward as quickly and as thoroughly as possible.
Are the suspensions in school or out of school?
Once again, that's the right to that child and family's privacy.
Jen O'Connor, our crime prevention technician, does have some additional information for you.
Good morning still. I just wanted to give you a little synopsis of this crime prevention bulletin that you're going to get out, that you're going to take with you today. And it's basically that this very serious incident has again brought to the forefront, and Superintendent Walsh and DA Ledoux and the Chief of Police and all of us have agreed the need for parents, schools, law enforcement, and the community at large to be more vigilant regarding unsupervised youth use of technology. Because as with most risky behaviors, we tend to react after the fact. We look for ways to prevent the continuance of these behaviors, and that unfortunately is the ultimate struggle of prevention, crime or otherwise. So I'll give you some information in this handout, but also I do want to speak to parents right now. Their core philosophy, parents, the core philosophy is to effective parenting. And this really isn't one more thing to add to their plate. It kind of covers, it falls under that core philosophy of knowing where our children are, knowing who they're with, knowing who their friends are and who their friends' parents are, and in this world, knowing what their technology and social habits are, so that we can help them navigate these landmines. We want to teach them to problem solve, and we want to teach them to consider the most serious consequences we've heard about here today. And like I said, the lesson isn't another thing added to the plate of parenting. It's just a wake-up call for parents and those who are responsible for and care about children to stay alert, stay informed, and if needed, to reach out and get help. So that's included in here for you, and just thank you for listening.
Any other questions? Anything from you gentlemen? Okay. All right, well, that concludes our press conference. We'll be around for a few minutes for any individual questions. I appreciate you coming. Thank you. Please don't forget to take one of these flyers. Maybe you could pass those out or leave those up front somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Eric Singer reporting live in Canon City, and we're talking to Chief Schultz in just a few moments, Canon City Police Chief. A news conference just ended just moments ago. Thank you, Chief, for coming on over here. Sorry it's so close to you. Thank you so much, sir. Let's do it this way. Thank you, sir. Quick wrap-up of the news conference, if you would, sir.
Our press conference today released information about the sexting investigation at Canon City High School. We have an active investigation underway. We're working in conjunction with the school district and with the district attorney's office.
You were talking about a 30-day timetable to complete a large chunk of the investigation. Let's address that, sir.
This is a large investigation involving potentially hundreds of students at this point, and it will take approximately 30 days for a substantial completion to a point where we can have a good idea what we're dealing with. There's many legal procedural steps we have to go through and forensic examinations of electronic devices.
Do you believe that you have corralled all the electronic devices with all those pictures, or are there more that you need to look at?
Absolutely have not gotten all the electronic devices. We only have 3 telephones at this point, and we're asking parents if they think their children are victims of this at Canyon City High School to by all means contact our school resource officers. If your child is a male student, to contact School Resource Officer Steve Husky. We've made his contact information available. If your child is a female student, please contact School Resource Officer Tanis Loomis. And again, we've made her contact information available as well.
Earlier you were talking about that there was another community not linked to this investigation, once again, not linked to this investigation, that has a similar investigation going on. And is it larger or smaller or about the same?
I don't know the size of it. The community is Greenbrier, Tennessee. The chief of police called us this morning. He had heard about our case and wanted to call us to confer with investigative strategies. And he shared with us that it's essentially the same issue occurring there as well.
At this point, do you believe it's just minors who are involved in this situation? And once again, that's up to 18 years old, and no adults, or you don't know yet?
We truly don't know how old everybody is. That will be part of the investigation. Hopefully, we'll be able to determine that within that 30-day window.
As a parent and a peace officer, what would your message be to other parents?
Get involved. Get involved with your children. Talk to them about this. Check their cell phones, and be actively involved as a parent. We are convinced this is happening everywhere in the United States, and parents need to be extra vigilant.
The DA was talking about at this point they're leaning towards, it depends on what the evidence is, but they're leaning towards not pursuing severe criminal charges against the students who are involved. Could you elaborate on that, sir?
Well, our job as the police department, as I mentioned earlier, is one of being the fact finder. We'll conduct an investigation, and our goal is to make it very thorough, very complete, and present that information in a timely manner to the district attorney. It's the office of the DA's decision on how to prosecute and what penalties to recommend.
One thing to consider for parents is the fact that once a penalty is severe enough, it's on that child's record for the rest of his or her life. And I think that's something that needs to be stressed right now.
That could happen, yes.
And that means that parents need, as you said, to be extra vigilant when it comes to this kind of situation.
Absolutely. Today's age of electronic devices, social media, parents need to get involved.
When one is shut down, I believe it was called File Vault. Is that correct, sir?
Photo Vault.
Photo Vault. When Photo Vault is looked at, now there's always a new technology that people are going to go to. What would you say to students and or parents about that?
You might have to do your own research. You might have to get involved. You might have to certainly talk to your children. We have made our crime prevention technician, Jen O'Connor, available to any parent in the community who'd like to talk to her. She has put together an informational flyer on this, and she will be keeping up to date on the research as these new devices, new apps occur.
So once again, a 30-day timetable to complete a large chunk of your investigation. Is that correct, sir?
A large chunk and a large assessment. I think at the end of 30 days we'll know exactly what we're dealing with.
Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
No, I think you've covered it all.
All right, thank you, sir. Chief Paul Schultz with the Canyon City Police. He's the Canyon City Police Chief here in Canyon City, Colorado. This news conference is about to wrap up. We'll be talking to some more people in just a few moments, and of course we'll have all that information for you. Debbie Kelly, as you can see, is right now talking to the superintendent and talking a little bit more to get more clarity with regards to how many have been suspended and a little bit more about those suspensions. Of course, she'll have more on the Gazette and on Gazette.com. The power of the print and the .com